My name is Clara Hayes, and at 32, I've built a life I'm proud of. I'm a data analyst in Austin, Texas, climbing the ranks at a top tech firm, earning more than I ever dreamed. It's a far cry from my childhood, when my world fell apart at 9. My mom walked out on my dad and me after their divorce, leaving us to scrape by. I worked hard, fought for every opportunity, and thought I'd left that pain behind. But then, one autumn evening, everything changed. A knock at my apartment door brought my past crashing back. My mom had somehow found out how much I earned, and she showed up with my spoiled half-brother, demanding I hand over a fortune. Their words hit like a punch, bold, shameless, and dripping with entitlement. It wasn't just about money. It was a betrayal that cut deep. How far would they go to get what they wanted? And what secrets were they hiding? I was about to find out, and it would test everything I thought I knew about family. If you've ever faced a family betrayal, drop a comment below and share your story. It means a lot to hear from you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real-life drama. I never thought my mom would find me because of the money I make. Growing up in Indiana, my life changed forever at 9 years old. My mom, Diana Collins, walked out on my dad, Robert Hayes, and me after their marriage fell apart. She'd grown distant, always distracted, until one evening, she grabbed a suitcase and left without a word. Dad later told me she'd fallen for another man, someone who promised her a better life. The divorce was quick, leaving us with a small house and a mountain of bills. Mom didn't just leave. She vanished, starting a new life across the state. Years later, I learned she'd had my half-brother, Ethan Clark, with her new husband. She never called, never visited, only sent a yearly birthday card with a few cold words that stung more than they comforted. Dad poured everything into keeping us afloat. He ran a small diner, a greasy spoon serving breakfast and burgers, working from dawn to midnight. He'd flip pancakes, scrub counters, and ring up customers, his hands rough from endless hours. The diner barely broke even. Some days, he brought home less than $50 after expenses. Rent was always late, and the fridge was often empty. Dad hid his worry, but I saw it in his slumped shoulders, the way he'd sigh over unpaid bills. He'd come home exhausted, yet still made time to ask about my day, his voice warm despite the strain. At 13, I couldn't stand watching him struggle alone. I started babysitting for neighbors, staying up late to watch their kids while studying by flashlight. Soon, I took on more, stocking shelves at a corner store, cleaning houses after school, even delivering newspapers before dawn. Every dollar I earned went to Dad for groceries or the electric bill. He'd argue, saying I should be a kid, not a breadwinner, but I insisted. It was my way of fighting back against the void Mom left. I'd hide my own exhaustion, pretending it was fine when my hands ached from scrubbing floors or my legs burned from biking miles with papers. School was my lifeline. I'd stay late for math club, poring over equations to drown out the hurt. Dad would sit with me at our worn kitchen table, helping with homework when he wasn't half asleep. He'd say I could do anything, that I was stronger than our circumstances. His words kept me going, even when I doubted myself. But Mom's absence was a constant ache. I'd stare at her old photos, wondering why I wasn't enough for her to stay. Those questions carved a hole in me, one I buried under work and study. By high school, I'd learned to depend on myself. I saved every penny, studied harder, and vowed never to need anyone like I'd needed her. Dad was my anchor, but I knew he couldn't carry us forever. I had to build my own path, and I did, one grueling step at a time. Still, the weight of those early years never fully left me. I learned to stand on my own early, but the past still haunted me. By high school, I knew my way out was through education. I buried myself in studies, staying up late to master calculus and ace every exam. My guidance counselor noticed my determination and pointed me toward scholarships. At 17, I won a full ride to a state university for data analytics, a field that clicked with my love for patterns and answers. That scholarship was my escape, a chance to rewrite my future. But even with tuition covered, I was on my own for everything else: books, rent, meals. There was no safety net, just me and my determination. To survive, I worked multiple jobs. I waited tables at a campus diner, dodging spilled coffee while memorizing code snippets. On weekends, I worked as an office assistant at a small law firm, sorting files and answering calls. Late nights, I cleaned offices, wiping down desks until my arms burned. My schedule was relentless. Up at 5 a.m., asleep past midnight, always calculating how many hours I needed to cover next month's bills. Every dollar went to essentials, with a sliver tucked away for emergencies. I pushed through exhaustion, driven by a promise to myself. I wouldn't let my past define me. College was a grind, but it shaped me. I took extra courses, joined data science clubs, and landed a summer internship at a tech startup. The work was intense, crunching numbers for hours, but it sharpened my skills. By graduation, I had a degree, a stack of awards, and a job offer from a tech company in Austin, Texas. Moving there felt like stepping into a new world. Austin's buzzing tech scene gave me a fresh start. I began as a junior analyst, pouring everything into my work. Within 5 years, I'd climbed to a senior role, leading projects and earning a salary that felt unreal compared to my childhood. With my success, I never forgot Dad. He'd sacrificed everything, running that diner day and night to keep us going. Once my income stabilized, I started sending him $500 a month. It wasn't much at first, but it helped him pay off debts from the diner and fix its leaky roof. Later, I covered his car repairs and even sent extra for a new fridge when his broke. He'd protest, saying he didn't want my money, but I insisted. It was my way of thanking him, of easing the burden he'd carried alone for so long. Every time we talked, his voice would crack with pride, telling me I was his greatest achievement. Those moments meant more than any promotion. Mom, though, was a different story. Her yearly birthday cards still came, each one a cold reminder of her absence. "Happy birthday. Hope you're doing okay," she'd write, her words sharp and hollow. No calls, no visits, just those cards piling up in a drawer. They stirred up old pain, questions I'd tried to bury. Why did she leave me behind? Why didn't she care? I pushed the thoughts down, focusing on my work and Dad's quiet support. But the hurt lingered. My life in Austin was one I'd built from scratch. I bought a modern apartment downtown, filled it with things that finally felt like mine. My colleagues respected me, and I'd found friends who became my chosen family. I thought I'd closed the door on my past, that I'd proven I didn't need Mom. But some wounds don't heal, no matter how far you climb. I thought I'd left the past behind. Until one autumn evening. One crisp evening, a sharp knock on my apartment door jolted me from my routine. When I opened it, my mom was standing there, her smile wide but unfamiliar. And beside her was my half-brother Ethan, slouched and unbothered. It had been over 2 decades since I'd seen her face, and the sight hit me like a wave, part shock, part ache. She stepped forward, arms open as if we'd never been apart. Her voice dripped with warmth that felt rehearsed. "Clara, my sweet girl, it's been too long," she said, pulling me into a hug I didn't return. Ethan barely looked up, his eyes glued to his phone, muttering a half-hearted, "Hey." We sat in my living room, the space I'd made my own, but their presence made it feel foreign. Mom's eyes darted around, lingering on the sleek furniture, the city view from my windows. She started with small talk, how she'd missed me, how proud she was. But her words felt hollow, like lines from a script. Then she got to the point. "I heard you're doing so well," she said, her tone shifting. "A big job. Good money." She leaned closer, her smile tightening. "Ethan's starting college soon. His tuition's $60,000, and we need your help. Just a little support. Maybe $3,000 a month to keep us afloat." I froze, her words sinking in. 60,000, 3,000 a month. The numbers were staggering, but it was her casual entitlement that stung most. Ethan finally looked up, smirking. "Nice place, but kind of small for someone making bank like you," he said, tone dripping with disdain. He sprawled across my couch, propping his sneakers on the coffee table like he owned it. "You could do better," he added, scrolling his phone again. His arrogance, her calculated warmth, it was too much. My stomach churned with a mix of anger and disbelief. This wasn't a reunion. It was a transaction. I stared at them, my mother and the son she chose, and something in me hardened. The years of silence, the absence on birthdays, The empty apologies. All of it came rushing back. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly, keeping my voice even. "You vanished when I was 13. Never called, never checked if I was alive. And now you show up to ask for money?" Mom's smile faltered. "It's not like that, Clara," she said, her tone sharp beneath the sugar. "Families help each other. You're doing well. I thought you'd want to give back. You know how hard things have been for us." "For us?" I asked, my chest tightening. "You mean for you and Ethan," Ethan snorted. "Wow, bitter much? You're acting like Mom owes you something. She raised you until you were, what, a teenager? Get over it." I turned to him, jaw tightening. "You have no idea what she did. Or what Dad and I went through after she left." He shrugged. "Sounds like a you problem. That was it." The years of swallowed pain boiled over. I stood pointing to the door. "Get out. Both of you." Mom's eyes widened. "Clara, don't be ridiculous." "No," I snapped. "You don't get to show up after 20 years and demand money like I'm your personal ATM. You made your choices." "I made mine. I built this life without you, and I'm not about to pay for your mistakes." Her expression hardened into something cold, familiar. "You always were ungrateful. Just like your father, stubborn and proud. Fine. Keep your precious money. But don't come crying when karma catches up." Ethan laughed under his breath. "Whatever. Guess you're still that same uptight overachiever." I opened the door and stood aside. "Out." They left without another word. Mom muttering about how money changes people. Ethan snickering as they disappeared down the hallway. When the door finally shut, the silence was deafening. I sank onto the couch, trembling, part rage, part sorrow. I hadn't realized how deep the wound still was until it was ripped open again. The next few days, I threw myself into work, trying to erase the encounter from my mind. But it lingered, a bitter taste I couldn't shake. Then the texts started. At first, they were guilt trips. Families should stick together. You're successful because of me. Your brother's future is at stake. You can't be this heartless. When I didn't reply, they turned ugly. You owe me for bringing you into this world. Don't think your fancy job makes you better than us. You'll regret treating your family like this. I blocked her number, but new ones kept popping up. Emails followed. Long, manipulative letters about how I'd abandoned her, how I was repeating the cycle she once did. One morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a printed photo, me walking out of my office, and a note. We know where to find you. My chest went cold. That same night, I called my father. His voice trembled when I told him. She's getting desperate, he said. Don't let her drag you into her mess again, Clara. She's made a habit of using people until there's nothing left. He paused. You've done enough. Don't let guilt fool you, I nodded, tears burning my eyes. I won't. The next day, I went to the police and filed a harassment report. They advised me to install cameras and keep records of everything. For weeks, I looked over my shoulder, walking briskly to my car, double-checking locks, sleeping with the hallway light on. Eventually, the messages stopped. The silence that followed felt uneasy but freeing. Months passed. My life slowly returned to normal. Long hours at work, dinners with friends, early morning runs. But something inside me had shifted. I realized how easily the past could creep back when left unresolved. One afternoon, my dad called with news. His heart wasn't doing well. Years of overwork had taken their toll. I flew home immediately, staying by his side through every appointment. We talked for hours about everything we'd never said. The diner, Mom, my childhood. I used to think I failed you, he said softly, that I couldn't give you enough. You gave me everything that mattered, I told him. You stayed, he smiled weakly. That's all I wanted to hear. He passed away quietly a few weeks later. The grief hit hard. I arranged the funeral, sold the old diner, and used part of the proceeds to set up a scholarship in his name. The Samuel Ellis Scholarship for Perseverance. It was my way of honoring him, of passing on the strength he'd given me. After the ceremony, As I packed up his house, I found an old photograph, me as a little girl, sitting on the diner counter, smiling at Dad behind the grill. On the back, in his handwriting, were the words, "My reason for everything." I sat in my father's empty house long after the guests had gone, the photo still clutched in my hands. The air was heavy with silence. Not just the quiet of absence, but the stillness that follows the end of something sacred. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not the restrained kind, but deep, unfiltered grief that left me gasping. I cried for him, for the little girl in the photo, and maybe even for the mother who'd never learned what love really meant. When the tears finally stopped, I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. I decided to stay in town for a few weeks, to settle the last of Dad's affairs and breathe away from the city's noise. Every morning, I'd stop by the old diner before the new owners opened, just to sit by the counter where I used to swing my legs and watch him cook. The place had changed. Shinier, sleeker, but it still smelled faintly of coffee and pancakes. Some ghosts don't leave easily. One morning, as I was heading out, I saw a figure standing by the parking lot. My mother. She looked older, thinner, and her confidence had worn into desperation. I froze, keys halfway to my car door. "Clara," she said quietly, stepping forward. "I heard about your father." I didn't answer. "I'm sorry," she continued. "Truly, I know I wasn't what I should have been." Her voice trembled, and for a brief second, I saw a flicker of the woman I once wished she'd been. "Why are you here?" I asked finally. She hesitated, wringing her hands. "I wanted to make peace. I didn't come for money this time, I swear. I don't want to die knowing you hate me." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I studied her. The wrinkles around her eyes, the nervous twitch of her lip, the way she couldn't quite meet my gaze. "I don't hate you," I said, after a long pause. "I just don't trust you." She nodded, eyes glistening. "That's fair." There was a silence between us, the kind that felt like both a wall and a bridge. She looked down at the ground. "Ethan's in trouble again," she admitted. "He made some bad choices. I tried to help him, but..." Her voice cracked. "He's gone." "Gone?" I echoed. She nodded weakly. "Overdose. 2 months ago." The world seemed to slow for a moment. For all his arrogance and cruelty, he had still been her son. And in some way, still my brother. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I didn't tell you because I thought you wouldn't care." I exhaled sharply, blinking away the sting in my eyes. "No one deserves that," she nodded, looking small, fragile. "I just thought maybe we could start over." I didn't answer immediately. Part of me wanted to say yes, to forgive, to believe she could change. But another part, the part that had learned the hard way, knew better. "Mom," I said finally, "you can't undo the past, and I can't pretend it didn't shape me. But maybe we can stop letting it hurt us." She looked at me, her lips trembling. That's all I wanted to hear. We stood there for a while, not hugging, not crying, just standing in the quiet morning light. It wasn't closure, not exactly, but it was something close enough to peace. After she left, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the diner's reflection in the windshield. The morning sun was climbing higher, and for the first time in years, I felt light. When I finally drove away, I didn't look back. Months later, I received a letter in the mail, no return address, just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper. "I'm leaving the city. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm trying to be better. Thank you for not hating me, Mom." I folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the photo frame with my dad's picture. It felt right somehow, like both pieces of my past were finally resting in the same place. That night, as I sat by my apartment window overlooking the city lights, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over pain, not for them, but for yourself. And in that quiet moment, I smiled. Not because the story ended perfectly, but because at last, it was mine. Weeks turned into months, and life began to move again, quietly, gently. I poured myself into work, not as a distraction this time, but as a form of rebuilding. Every project, every late night, felt like another brick in the foundation of the life I had reclaimed. Still, some nights, I'd catch myself replaying old memories. Dad flipping pancakes at the diner, Mom humming off-key while burning toast, Ethan teasing me from across the table. Fragments of a family that never really was, but still somehow existed. One evening, I received an unexpected call from a woman named Angela Warren, a social worker from a small coastal town 2 hours away. "Miss Ellis?" she said softly. "I believe you're listed as a relative of Patricia Collins." It took me a second to process the name. "Patricia, my mother, yes," I replied cautiously. "Is she all right?" Angela hesitated. "She's alive but not well. She was found unconscious in her apartment. It looks like she'd been struggling with malnutrition and some untreated conditions. She mentioned your name before being taken to the hospital." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. A hollow ache spread in my chest. Not quite grief, not quite relief. Something in between. "Can I come see her?" I asked finally. Angela gave me the address, and the next morning, I drove out before sunrise. The road wound through quiet hills and faded farmland, the kind of landscape that forces you to think. When I arrived at the hospital, Angela met me in the lobby. "She's awake," she said gently. "Weak but alert. I think she'll be glad to see you." I took a deep breath and walked in. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, her frame fragile beneath thin blankets, her once fiery eyes dimmed to soft gray. But when she saw me, she smiled. "Clara," she whispered, voice raspy. "You came." I did. I pulled a chair closer. "How are you feeling?" "Old," she said with a faint laugh. "Guess time finally caught up." We sat in silence for a moment before she spoke again. "I kept thinking about what you said, about not letting the past hurt us anymore." Her eyes glistened. "I tried. I really did." "I know," I said quietly. "And I'm proud of you for that." She reached out, her trembling fingers brushing mine. "You always were stronger than me." "No," I said softly. "Just luckier." Her lips curved into a weak smile. "You sound like your father," I smiled back. "That's the best thing you could have said." For the next few days, I stayed nearby, visiting her each morning. We talked about everything, not as mother and daughter, but as two women finally laying down their burdens. She told me about the years after she left. The bad choices, the loneliness, the endless search for a do-over that never came. "I used to think success would save me," she said one night, staring at the ceiling. Then I realized I didn't even know what that meant. "Maybe it's not about success," I said. "Maybe it's about peace," she nodded faintly. "You've found it, haven't you?" "Some days," I said. "Other days I still fight for it." Her eyes softened. "That's enough." A few weeks later, I got the call I knew would come. She passed in her sleep quietly, without pain. At the funeral, only a handful of people came, mostly nurses, neighbors, and a few old friends I'd never met. I gave a short eulogy, simple and honest. "She wasn't perfect," I said, "but she tried in her own way, and sometimes that has to be enough." Afterward, as I placed a white lily on her casket, I whispered, "Goodbye, Mom. I hope you found your peace." When it was over, I stood by the shore near the cemetery, watching the waves roll in. The sky was overcast, but there was something calming about the horizon. Infinite. Forgiving. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the photo of Dad and me at the diner, now framed beside the letter Mom had sent. For the first time, the two memories didn't clash. They coexisted, imperfect, but whole. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and rain. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. In that moment, I wasn't the abandoned daughter or the successful woman trying to prove her worth. I was simply Clara Ellis, someone who had walked through fire and come out tempered, not burned. And maybe that was enough. The weeks after my mother's passing were quiet in a way I hadn't experienced before. No unresolved tension, No guilt whispering in the back of my mind. Just stillness. The kind that follows when a storm has finally exhausted itself. Back home, I found myself rearranging my apartment, not out of boredom, but instinct. I cleared out old boxes, donated clothes, threw away papers I'd kept out of some unspoken duty to the past. Each item that left my hands felt like a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. One evening, while cleaning the bookshelf, a small journal fell open. My father's handwriting inside. I had taken it from his house months ago, but never read it. The first page was dated the year Mom left. His words were raw, unsure, but filled with the same quiet determination I remembered from him. She's gone. Clara doesn't understand why yet. I told her sometimes love leaves, but it doesn't mean we stop loving. I just hope she grows up knowing that one person stayed. I closed the journal and held it to my chest. For so long, I'd defined myself by what I'd lost, a mother's love, a normal childhood, a sense of belonging. But now I saw the truth. I hadn't been abandoned. I'd been anchored. My father's steadfastness had been enough to keep me from drifting. A few months later, I decided to take a sabbatical from work. For the first time in my adult life, I had no agenda, no deadlines, no performance metrics, no ladder to climb. I packed a small suitcase and drove to the coast, renting a quiet cottage overlooking the water. Mornings were slow, coffee on the porch, the hum of waves against the rocks. Afternoons, I'd walk along the beach, sometimes collecting shells, sometimes just letting the wind tangle my hair. It was the first time I'd truly allowed myself to exist without proving anything to anyone. One evening, while watching the sunset, I realized something simple yet profound. Peace isn't something that finds you. It's something you choose, moment by moment, even when it feels undeserved. A few days before heading home, I visited a small local gallery. The owner, an older man named Thomas, noticed me lingering by a display of photographs. All portraits of women, each capturing a different kind of strength. Beautiful, aren't they? He said, stepping beside me. I nodded. They are. They look free, he smiled knowingly. Freedom isn't about leaving something behind. It's about forgiving what stays with you. The words stayed with me. Months later, I returned to the city and opened my own small creative studio, Ellis Collective. We focused on visual storytelling, not just the glossy, perfect kind, but the kind that exposed the cracks and beauty of real lives. Our first exhibit was called Resilience. The centerpiece was a black and white photograph of a diner at dawn, sunlight breaking through its windows. Beneath it, a plaque read, "For those who stayed, for those who kept going anyway." The opening night was quiet, intimate. A few old friends came, along with new ones who'd become like family. As the lights dimmed, I stood near the photo and felt the weight of everything. Loss, love, forgiveness, not as burdens, but as the fabric of who I'd become. Later that night, I sat by my window again, just like I had after my father's funeral. The city lights shimmered below, and somewhere faintly, I could almost hear the sound of him humming in the diner. I smiled, not out of sadness, but gratitude, because in the end, the story wasn't about pain or abandonment, it was about endurance. About how sometimes the people who break us also shape us, and about how survival isn't just continuing, it's transforming. I turned off the light, letting the room fill with moonlight. For the first time, my heart felt weightless, not because everything was perfect, but because I no longer needed it to be. And as the night settled, I whispered the words I wished my younger self could have heard all along. You were always enough.